Hey Riley, we should turn down there because it's, who's got it on YouTube? There's a delay. Oh. Okay.
It's good to get rid of these.
That's why you need a service leader, so you don't have to wear them.
Good reason, Amy. We will pause for the entrance of Flannery. Oh, I never got a service. So good morning, everyone. Let's start with our gathering song, which is in your orders of service on the third page there.
Yeah, so it's on the back of your order of service. We are here together. Stand if you wish. Sit, dance, shout, clap. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Again, we are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place.
We are the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax, although we may get voted later today as the Universalist Unitarian Community of Halifax, both in the sanctuary here and on Zoom. My name's Margaret Galbraith, and I will be your service leader this morning. And our speaker will be Kim Fry, a climate change specialist with the Halifax Regional Municipality. Welcome, Kim, and her daughter. We are a progressive spiritual community. We recognize that the truths of the universe are too complex to be summed up in one religious tradition's dogma. Instead of prescribed beliefs, here we focus on relationships, community, and responsible action in this life. We draw meaning and wisdom from many sources: nature, science, the sage teachings of old, and awe for the great mystery itself. We offer our affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of all. We respect the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, Our service this morning speaks to this principle in that we are hearing of the work being done by our municipality toward addressing the issues of climate change, which will be affecting all of us in this web of life. Currently, we are a lay-led congregation. Our mission is to provide a community that nurtures personal and spiritual growth, practices inclusiveness, celebrates diversity, and affirms individual and collective commitment to community service and to social justice. We especially welcome anyone who's new or newish, in here or online. If you'd care to introduce yourselves, I could bring you around a microphone. If you're not already receiving notifications from our church and would like to know about the activities and services, please send an email to president@uuch.ca. Those of you here in person are welcome to join us after the service for coffee or tea or water or whatever, and conversation, and on Zoom for an after-service chat. For all of you of all ages, we acknowledge that not everyone participates in worship in the same way, so you're welcome to move or stand or sit or whatever works for you. Jessica Friesen is our music director, and Riley Friesen manages the technology. Thank you both. Announcements. The main announcements are listed in your order of service. And as far as I know, the main one is about our meeting right after the service today, although I haven't seen Madam President yet, but presumably we're having that today, right, Joe? Yes. So that will be immediate, well, within 10, 15 minutes or so of the end of our service. And that is to decide on the name for this community. The other main item, I think, is our holiday bazaar, which will take place next Saturday at December the 2nd. The times and so on are listed on your order of service. This is a major fundraiser for us, so we would really encourage everyone to support it, either by donating items or baking things for sale or coming in and enjoying yourself and buying things on Saturday. There's also notices, I think we have notices somewhere to distribute to put around in the neighborhood and so on. Did we ever print any of those off? They are online, yeah.
We were having trouble with the printers.
Oh, okay. Well, it will be, we can send that out this afternoon again for people to print off if they can do that.
Could I also add, the announcement says, drop off gently used items. We will also accept new items. And it says here from 10 to 5:30. I don't think that's right, is it?
I don't know who's staying till 5:30.
No, usually it's from 10 till 3. So I would
On Friday,
aim
yeah.
for 3.
Yes. Okay. Oh, another item that didn't get in here is about our newsletter deadline, which is actually tomorrow. It's a bit earlier this month. So the deadline is for tomorrow evening, right, Edda? Yes, tomorrow.
And could we meet our newest person?
We can have a special introduction for the newest member of our congregation.
Yeah, sure. Oh, her eyes just opened up, so she's dozing, actually. She's not gonna say anything, but she might make a sound at some point.
Does it light up?
Hi, everyone. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is Flannery Caitlin Lynch, her first Unitarian, oh, her eyes are open. Her first service in person. Oh, she might sleep through it. Hopefully our speaker is not offended by that. But I might have to get up and walk around if she's crying. We'll just kind of do what we have to do. But yeah, thanks for welcoming us. Oh.
He's famous. This is his first debut. Or her, is it she? Yeah. Flannery.
This
October 4th was when she was born.
And then Jessica, did you have an announcement too?
Yes, I have an announcement. So because we haven't had a lot of members for the choir, I still want to do something, some kind of choir or group for Christmas, the holiday season. So we have different services coming up. So if you are interested in maybe getting together, doing some music, just come up to me after the service and I will email you and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Now, I was anticipating that Pam Griffin-Hody would be here today to do our land acknowledgement. She doesn't seem to be on Zoom either. There used to be. Yes, it's in the order of service, so I will just read what we have in the order of service. We are located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory remind us that we are all treaty people. So we commit ourselves to collaboratively move towards truth, reconciliation, and equity for the Indigenous, Black, and other communities of color who continue to experience systemic oppression in our communities. And we must remember that we are all together facing the climate issues, and we'll have to work together to resolve those. Our chalice lighting now. I will light the chalice, the symbol of our faith. With these words from Albert Schweitzer that speak to us in today's troubled times. At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Our opening hymn is number 175 in the gray hymnal. We celebrate the web of life. It may not be that familiar, but the words really spoke to me.
We celebrate the web of life, its magnitude we sing, for we can see divinity in every living thing, a fragment of the perfect whole in cactus and in quail, as much in tiny barnacle as in the great blue whale. Of ancient dreams we are the sum, our bold link stone to star, protector. I wanted to give you time. Respect the water, land, and air, which gave all creatures birth. Protect the lives of all that share the glory of the earth.
Let's sit for a few moments now to meditate on those words and our place in the web of life. Some words from Reverend Scott Taylor, and then we'll have a moment of silence. The wonder all around us. Think, friends, of the sky, of the stars that dance like fireworks overhead, Think of the trees, budding or bare, and the rivers and rain, all a part of this living, breathing earth that makes our living and breathing possible. Think too, then look at the faces that surround you. What a wonder it is that we don't have to travel this world alone. All of it is miracle. All of it is mystery. All of it deserves our awe. Now we take the time in our service to reflect on our joys and sorrows, a time set apart to honor the sorrows and the joys that you, the members and friends of this congregation, are living, to acknowledge the mutual support of our community. Our communal well here will hold our thoughts. First, I'll drop a stone into that for those who are struggling mentally, physically, financially. And another stone for those joys, the big joys that come infrequently, the smaller joys, if you just notice them every day. Now, if any of the rest of you want to share, you want to come forward, I have the microphone here.
My daughter, Jessie Rose, which some of you may remember, turns 32 today. So she is a brand new daughter. I have quite an older daughter, and she came 5 weeks early as a surprise birthday gift for me because I turn 65 tomorrow, so I'm officially a senior. One for her, one for me.
I'm glad to see Mary Ellen with us this morning. She asked me to put a stone in the well to remember her sister-in-law, Beverly Edwards, who died in Calgary on the 20th of November. Looking for a nice one. All right.
I have a hopeful joy, and that is that the HRM, that's the Halifax Municipal, has finally decided that the Northwest Arm is worthy of protecting. So, it's not a done deal, and I ask you, if you can, go to the Protect the Northwest Arm website or the Ecology Action website, and write to Russell Reese. What's his last name? Anyway, he's at the planning department, and it is in there saying, yes, this is wonderful. Please, we agree with this motion to protect the Northwest Arm, and also copy your counselor. So, Reese Burnell is the chap who is the planning department guy, and it would be just wonderful if Halifax really took this on. They haven't yet, because they've always been, well, it's a federal responsibility. Now we might make it happen. Thank you.
Can I put a stone in, Leslie?
I'll put 2 in.
The water's low. I have a joy, excitement actually. I have some friends who are traveling to Uganda for Christmas, so I'm jealous, and I hope they have a good flight. And yeah, I get to go to Winterpeg. Yeah, lucky me. Safe travels. Yeah. Long flight.
Colin? I'm getting mysterious signals here.
I just wanted to note that Colin celebrated his birthday yesterday.
Well, I wasn't going to make that public.
We need a stone for that, definitely.
How many years young was it?
And maybe more.
How many years young was it?
It's 102. Still young.
Are there any messages from Zoom? No. Okay. These are the joys and the sorrows, both those acknowledged here this morning and those held in the silent sanctuary of our hearts that weave us together in the interdependent fabric of community. Our next song will be Voice Still and Small, number 391 in your order of service, or in your gray hymnal. You may stay seated for this one.
Voice still and small, deep inside home, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Let's do that again. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing.
Mary Frances will introduce our speaker.
Riley turned it. Okay, Riley.
Hello. Hi. All right, I get to introduce Kim. So I kind of officially met Kim a couple years ago on a playground in the north end of Halifax. And she and I were there with our respective kiddos, and we struck up a distance conversation, height of the pandemic. And Kim had just moved back from Toronto. Moved here from Toronto. And I said, hey, I'm from Ontario. I'm from Cornwall. And her eyes kind of did this surprised expression. And turns out she's from Cornwall too, which is a smaller city in Ontario, and not very many people make it out of Cornwall. So it was a bit of a surprising thing for us to have that in common. And so we got to talking about our families, and she knew my dad because she had worked on his campaign, political campaign. And then years later, my dad had worked on Kim's campaign. So it was all these cool connections that we had. And so now I have the pleasure of continuing to run into Kim in the neighborhood and on Kiddical Mass bike rides and at music festivals. And even though Kim has only been in Nova Scotia for 2 years, it sort of seems like she's this staple of the environmental and music scene here in Halifax. But before moving to Halifax, she lived in Toronto for almost 30 years. And I'm pulling this stuff from your bio online. She worked as an activist. She worked for environmental organizations like Greenpeace. She was an elementary school teacher and won the David Suzuki Teaching Award for Environmental Inquiry. And she's also managed her daughter's band, a very successful band in Toronto. And so now she's been in Nova Scotia for a couple of years. She's worked for the EAC, she's taught, and now in her role with HRM, she's a climate change specialist. And she's going to talk to us today about Halifax, which is great. And one other little connection, when I reached out to her to come and speak, she mentioned that she was also affiliated with the First Unitarian Church in Toronto. So all these cool connections with Kim. So with that, I'll invite Kim to come up and share some info on Halifax. And this is their kiddo, Nico.
This mic or this mic? This one? This one? Okay. I'll take this off. Oops. Thanks so much, Mary Frances, and thank you for having me. And I certainly remember Mary Frances as a younger kid in Cornwall, which is not a very big city, but it is home to Ryan Gosling, for those of you who have seen the Barbie movie. And our fathers did work together at the paper mill, and I did help coach his soccer team when he was about Nico's age. He was with I was like 12, he was maybe 6, and so yeah, another person who made it out of Cornwall, but not that many people do. So I'm really pleased, and as Mary Frances said, in the mid-90s to kind of the mid-2000s, I was active in the First Unitarian, and it was a really important place for me, and where I met a lot of women who were in the earth-based tradition, and I took a number of courses and became a member of First Unitarian, and used to take my daughter, who's now 20, when she was a little toddler. So I certainly feel very at home and have many friends in Unitarian, and go to Unicamp regularly too. So my daughter kind of grew up going to Unicamp. So it's lovely to be here to talk about Halifax and to talk about the amazing climate work that is happening in this city. I'm just going to put my password in. I apologize, I have a slideshow. Because it's a government, there's all kinds of weird security firewalls, and we tried really hard, many ways to make it work on the screen, and it's just being a bit finicky. So what I will do is I'm going to talk a little bit through the presentation, and then I will share this presentation once I talk to our IT person and figure out how to get it off here so that you can take a look at it. Nico, you need to sit down, or you need to go back there. but you can't be bopping up and down, okay? Yeah, why don't you do that, okay? You want to stay here, then you just need to stay, okay? I think they just want to be with me. That's okay. So as Mary Frances said, I've worked in a variety of different roles over the last many decades. I did a degree in environmental studies at York University, and I've been working on climate change since I was in high school in the early 90s in Cornwall, and was actually one of the alternates to go to the Rio Climate Summit in Brazil in 1992, and didn't actually get to go, but that's sort of like how long I've been at it. And so I feel like the role with the Halifax Regional Municipality and with Halifax has been really great, because it lets me really combine a whole bunch of my passions. And one of the things that I was really excited to move to Halifax around was knowing that Halifax was this award-winning climate plan, but also described itself as a plan and a movement. And to that, for me, was a really interesting thing, to not just say we're putting together a plan that's done by a whole bunch of consultants, but that Halifax was a plan that was really developed by the community. And so some context to Halifax. So Halifax was the second city in Canada to declare a climate emergency. And that happened in early 2020, sort of like after a lot of the, what are you doing? Okay, don't do that. A lot of the climate strikes were happening, and then the Halifax plan was developed with a lot of consultation with community and passed unanimously at council. And that all happened before I moved here. But shortly after I moved here, there was a real big movement afoot, largely driven by the Ecology Action Center, but broadly because so many people had participated in developing the Halifax plan with its 46 goals. There was an idea that we needed the resources to actually be able to implement it. Like, we need the money to be able to do that. And as probably everyone here knows, municipalities are very, very constrained in their ability to raise and generate revenue. So what we find across Canada is more and more responsibilities are being placed on municipalities in terms of what they, you need to stop interrupting, honey. Okay, you stop interrupting, love. So more and more responsibilities, but not the mechanisms to actually get the funds to be able to take on those responsibilities well. So really across Canada, we see one of the only ways to really generate revenue is by property tax. And there's only so much that we can raise property taxes. So what was really interesting to me, having moved here, was that there was a municipal climate tax that got proposed to be able to have the funds to be able to implement Halifax. So that was really interesting, and it passed. And when I tell people in other parts of Canada that Halifax has a designated, honey, that's super distracting. So can you sit down, love? Thank you. Has this dedicated fund, people don't believe me, but to me, that's a sign that that folks in Nova Scotia really deeply understand the impacts of climate change, have seen it firsthand. I mean, just in one calendar year, we had 2 hurricanes, the forest fires, and the deadly floods in the calendar years. And it's really been demonstrated that when we invest in climate mitigation and climate adaptation really early on, we save money down the road. And so that the specific climate tax is actually going to save us money in the long term. So Halifax Regional Municipality not only has this very ambitious climate plan and movement that has been developed with consultation with community and has been funded through this climate tax, but it has really created some strong community-led mechanisms for getting that support and implementation. And it's interesting too, because Halifax is not a typical city in terms of, as you know, the regional municipality encompassing rural areas being quite large. So HRM is 5,200 square kilometers, and it has 400 kilometers of shoreline. It has about 46% of the province's population, generates 52% of Nova Scotia's GDP. And so with that in mind, there's a real need to come up with a plan that is going to be able to adapt to different, it's not just a densely urbanized area, right? To be able to adapt to different kinds of environments. I feel like this is a community where most people are pretty familiar with what climate change is, the difference between weather and climate change. So weather being the short-term changes in the atmosphere, what you get in minutes or hours, and climate being the long-term shift in temperatures and weather patterns. So it's more of a trend and changes that happen over years and decades. And to put that in context, just in the last week, they've indicated that the global average temperature exceeded 2 degrees of warming. And I don't know if you've been following the temperatures in South America, but that is the danger zone. And that doesn't mean that we've blown into the going past 1.5 degrees Celsius, because when we're looking at those, it's over a longer period of time. But this is dangerous that we're starting to get on a consistent basis, creeping up towards 2 degrees plus change on average. So this is telling us that things are speeding up faster than what we anticipated. And that's partly because in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, there's many sources. There's agriculture, there's forestry, there's industry, there's our energy supply, which is the biggest source, or one of the biggest sources here in Nova Scotia, because we're so dependent still on coal and gas. There's waste and wastewater, there's transportation, commercial buildings, which is another big source in Nova Scotia, residential buildings, electricity supply, heat supply, livestock, and there's other emissions related to things like fashion. One of the things that I've been feeling anxious about is we have a group chat of people I did my degree in environmental studies with. Many of them work in climate, and they were talking about the modeling and how it didn't really anticipate the levels of forest fires that we're seeing. And in Canada, for the last 2 years, the biggest source of emissions has been forest fires. So that's something to note, and something to really then know we don't have control over that really in the same kind of way that we have control over some of the other sources of emissions. So that we really need to scale up fast in reducing the emissions where we do have some level of control. So when it comes to buildings, when it comes to transportation, we need to go further and faster than we have been. So, quick and dirty science, why is the climate changing? It's because we've seen a dramatic increase in greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, some greenhouse gas emissions are a good thing, right? They've helped to regulate the Earth's temperature, and without them, it would be too cold. But we have seen since, in the last 200 years, the anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions have spiked so much that we're now seeing the very dangerous results of increased warming that has had a very big disruptive impact on the global ecosystems. So climate impacts are increasing at unprecedented rates all over the world, and Atlantic Canada will have the highest adaptation costs in the country. So of anywhere in Canada, the adaptation exceeds any other region. And that has a lot to do with the fact that Nova Scotia is low-lying and has such a large amount of coastline. It also has to do with the hurricanes and the path that we're in, and then the flooding that we see due to that. So climate impacts that we see in Nova Scotia, obviously coastal flooding being a big one, but also overland flooding, as we saw this summer with rain and rivers, and just knowing that we see more intense rainfall in a shorter period of time, and that we're not necessarily adapted for that. We see the impacts of erosion, of extreme wind events, more frequent and intense hurricanes, extreme water levels, and something that I don't think people really predicted, the forest fires that we saw this year. Also, having extreme heat events is not something that Nova Scotia is necessarily prepared for or built for. We've been seeing droughts and as I said, increased wildfires. So state of HRM climate by 2050 is based on the trends and the patterns, is that the number of days above 25 degrees will more than double, and we'll see the length of hot season quadruple and have a much higher likelihood of droughts. It's going to be much wetter. Precipitation will increase throughout all seasons. And we're going to see extreme weather events from heat and precipitation, flooding. We're going to see increased hurricanes and also much warmer winters where the number of days below freezing will be reduced by 35%. So all of this, I think, was in the background in the development of Halifax. And I'll be done when I'm done, love. You need to sit. I'm so sorry. Nico's dad is sick. They were not supposed to come with me today, so thank you all for your patience. So all of that was in the background of really knowing that as we developed a plan, a climate plan for Halifax, we needed to get it right? We needed to see that the next 10 years are particularly important, and that this is where most of the work needs to be done from a mitigation standpoint, so mitigating, reducing the amount of emissions, to have a course correct and stay within our carbon budget. A carbon budget's the estimated total amount of carbon dioxide equivalent to what can be emitted into the atmosphere while remaining within the advised global temperature threshold, which is 1.5 degrees Celsius. So our carbon budget states that if we do not take critical and meaningful mitigation action between now and 2028, we're not going to meet the recommendations from the International Panel on Climate Change. So while steep reductions are required for the first 10 years, this is where we really have to bring down our emissions. And then we continue to bring them down between 2030 and 2050. And I keep having this moment of, Nico is 7, and it feels like not that long ago that Nico was born, and that it is only 7 years till we get to 2030. It's really a short period of time that we have to do this massive amount of work to reduce our emissions. And it feels sometimes a bit discouraging that we're not necessarily on that pathway. But I feel like Halifax is a really important step in the right direction and gives us a blueprint for what we need to do. And I feel grateful to be living in a community that has put so much thought and care into developing that climate plan. Now, what's also interesting about Halifax is that it sees itself as both a climate action plan, but also an economic development plan. So that understanding, sweetie, I love you, and you need to sit down and stop. Okay, thank you. No, I'm in the middle. You just need to listen. Okay, then you go read a book. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I know. And I know that this is a patient community, so I appreciate it. So that idea that it's both a climate plan and an economic development plan means that we're focused on things like climate adaptation, clean energy, electrifying transportation, and doing deep energy retrofits, with an understanding that these things are good in terms of reducing our emissions. They're good in terms of, like, if we can do deep energy retrofits and make houses more livable, more comfortable, where people don't have to spend as much money to heat them, but they also keep them cooler in the summer times, that all of that work creates new jobs. It creates many, many, many more jobs than starting a coal plant, right? Because these are jobs that are very hands-on, very localized. You need the people here in Nova Scotia to do that work. And that we can think about developing those new jobs and see that the benefits of that new green economy go to communities that have historically been left out of economic development. So in terms of the Halifax plan, there are things that we're doing that are about making changes within the municipality, what the city has control over, like what HRM's assets are. But then there's also the what can we do to drive change with other people. And so there's mitigation projects at HRM, and that includes utility scale renewables the idea that we dramatically need to increase the amount of solar and wind energy that we have. It means that we need to have net zero corporate buildings so that all new corporate buildings that are built are net zero ready. It means that we need to think about net zero ferry design. Our ferry system is diesel right now. We need to figure out how we can electrify it, also to put in a high-speed ferry from Bedford, because we know that there's very little capacity to increase highways. We don't want to be increasing highways, so how can we get new and innovative transportation plans? So the idea of having a Bedford a high-speed electric ferry coming in from Bedford is a big part of our Halifax plan, as well as electric vehicle purchases for all of the municipal fleet, electrifying all vehicles across the province and the municipality. So an electric vehicle strategy that includes a lot of charging stations. We also have a retrofit pilot program and a solar city program to help people put solar panels on their buildings. And so the mitigation and adaptation actions are seen within the plan as being very complementary, not necessarily separate. So we know that even if we dramatically reduce our emissions, we're still going to have to adapt as a municipality. We're already seeing the need to adapt to climate change because it's not in this distant future, it's right here and right now. And so these actions both decrease the impacts of climate on society, economy, and the environment, and help to build the resilience of our communities. And so the plan very much looks at those together. So sustainable transportation, energy efficiency, renewable energy are very much mitigation, but when it comes to education or local food systems, water conservation, urban forests, new energy systems, those are both mitigation and adaptation. And then we also need to look at flood protection, disaster management, and infrastructure upgrades so that we're thinking about our infrastructure as being able to withstand the impacts of climate. So we're in the process of building much more resilient infrastructure and changing our building standards, looking at stormwater management, mapping where there are increased climate hazards. But we're also building resilient communities with a focus on climate education, looking at diversity and inclusion, the communities that are most at risk, coming up with food systems resilience, emergency management, climate preparedness, and also helping communities to adapt and to plan. One of the things that we did with the hurricane, was it Fiona? Which one was the one that just came? The big one, yeah. The big one. Yeah, Fiona, no, the one that was this year that wasn't as big. Lee, yes, Hurricane Lee, that we had emergency kits that we distributed very quickly to, and we worked with the Halifax Public Libraries to do that. And so we were able to distribute those kits to new Canadians and people who had just arrived in Halifax who might not have been through a hurricane before. So figuring out how do we support communities who don't necessarily have the experience and aren't knowledgeable in how to prepare. So adaptation projects also include lots of tree planting, and we have refrigerated trucks when we know that there's going to be power loss, that we can go and collect people's food so that they don't lose all of their food, coming up with more storm kits for newcomers, and being able to build more resilient buildings. Sweetie, can you? I'm sorry. Yes, I think I'll leave it there. And maybe just also say that we're really focused, and where I work on is the collective impact team. And so we're really trying to have an eye on how do we build communities of climate aware and climate active Haligonians. How do we build communities and help connect communities that want to take on community level projects together. So we did the first ever human library at the Halifax Central Library a couple of weeks ago, where we had 24 human books in 5 theme areas. So we had how to get around your home, nature, food, and was one other. I think it was just general community, and people could come and they could check out a book and have a short conversation with that book. And it was an incredibly joyful, and the book was a human, joyful and powerful and exciting event. Can you please sit? It was a really great event because we saw that people were kind of feeling a lot of despair, and that this was an opportunity for them to see that they could take action, that they could connect with someone in their local community who had started to do things, find out how to put solar panels, or get an opportunity to talk to someone who gets around using public transit or a bicycle, and have that one-on-one conversation with them. So we want to do more events like that. In April, we will be doing a whole series of events with the Halifax Public Libraries. There's lots of opportunities to get involved with Halifax. As we say, it isn't just a plan, it is a movement. And so I look forward to your community becoming part of the Halifax movement. Thank you. Any questions? You can ask me at home.
We have one online.
Okay.
So Gabber wants to know if the tidal energy and green hydrogen are part of the Halifax initiative.
The tidal and green.
The tidal energy and green hydrogen.
I don't believe that they are. I know that hydrogen's being explored by Halifax Transit. It may be incorporated. So there's the 46 recommendations within Halifax, but then as part of our meeting our emissions targets, there's also the integrated mobility plan, which exists sort of separate from Halifax. And then there's what Halifax Transit is going to be doing. And I know that they're looking into green hydrogen. So I think it exists there. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Amy Moonshadow. Any chance that in order to do all this, and like let's get rid of the parking lots that are in the downtown, there's places that could be nice housing where there are parking lots, and lower or make a better deal with buying Metro Transit passes and things like that, because I'm sorry, I remember when I lived across the street and the bus fare was 35 cents, and when it went up to 50, I'm thinking, oh goodness, they're going to lose so many passengers, and now it's $2.50, and of course with the urban sprawl, people have to work downtown, so they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're gonna buy those, but getting up to $100 a month for a bus pass is too much. And in the olden days as well, children and seniors went were half the price. Not anymore, and so you're worrying about seniors in isolation. Well, give us a good rate. Thank you.
I'm just going to make a comment and I'll bring it over. Having covered council for 25 years, I was there when they formed Halifax. It is a good plan, and I applaud them. They seem to be sticking to it. But I encourage you to talk to Mary Frances during the budget debates if they try to weasel, because so that we know and we can keep them on track, because I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Anyway.
Finally, my question's about transit as well. I think having the electric ferry from Bedford is an incredibly awesome thing, and switching some of the buses to electric, I mean, that's all very positive. It doesn't do anything to get the cars off the road in other parts of the city. I'm in an odd position that I lived away for 16 years, and then I moved back to the same house. So I can see the increases, and other people go, oh, no, it's always been like that. No, it hasn't been always like that. When I lived in Herring Cove in the 90s, my kids were at school and daycare downtown. My husband and I worked downtown. And it still took us only about another extra 10 minutes to get to the peninsula. If I have to be on the peninsula before 9:30 in the morning, I need to give myself 2.5 hours. That's insane. And the buses are the same. The buses to Herring Cove are on the same schedule that they were in the 90s, and there are no buses past, just a little bit past me. And yet, one summer when I was visiting about 15 years ago, I drove from my house to Sambro, and I counted 13 new subdivisions. And there's more now, and yet there seems no willingness on the part of public transit to think of transit as a service rather than some kind of a business. The bus stop's too far for me to walk, but I might consider taking the bus on occasion. I'm not paying more to take the bus than for me to drive downtown. That's just, it's illogical.
Right. You have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say we did a bunch of engagements with all of the branches of the libraries about Halifax and to get people's feedback and questions. And definitely the number one comment question was around public transit. And as someone who moved here from a city with, you know, like a very well-developed, like all kinds of people ride transit in Toronto, there's problems with it, but it's well used. It struck me how stigmatized public transit is in Halifax. And that's how it was when I grew up in Cornwall. It was a similar thing that, you know, it was perceived to be, and people felt like only young people and low-income people used it. And I feel like, I think downtown, maybe there's like more diverse people using it, but I think there's much work that needs to be done to have all kinds of people use it. And when you have all kinds of people use it, all kinds of people advocating for it too. And certainly, you know, there are movements in Canada, around the world, to make public transit free, that you don't pay for fares. I know that there's a pilot program. So children 12 and under they're free here. And there is a pilot program. I think half of the middle school and high school students in Halifax get a free pass. Kingston, Ontario, every person 18 and under gets a free pass, with the idea is if you get young people using transit, used to using it when they're young, then they become transit users down the road. So that's a really interesting and great model. And not to take away the responsibility from the municipal government, but Canada is the only OECD country in the world where the federal government does not contribute to the operational costs of urban public transit, the only one. And so if you go to other big cities around the world, it's like, oh my gosh, the transit's working so well. And that's because the federal levels of government invest in it, and that is not true in Canada. So that's another piece that needs to be developed, not to then take the responsibility off of Halifax regional municipality. Certainly the municipalities have that role too, but I think there needs to be a conversation at many levels of government.
Some things do still come down to funding.
Right.
So that's why the sign that used to be behind the driver that said this bus is made possible by funding from, and it had this, you know, I'm not sure how long it's been since I stopped seeing that sign, but you know, I remember 20 years ago, that sign was behind the driver that said this bus is funded by levels of, you know, from the federal, provincial, and municipal government, you know. And so like one night when a woman, you know, was just horrified that, you know, driver didn't let a child on the bus in the last run kind of thing because didn't have enough money, you know, I said, well, look, you know, it's funded by all levels of government, so you know, talk to the three of them and tell them, you know, you're horrified.
Yeah, I mean, they'll pay for buses, they'll do capital expenses, they just won't pay for the operational costs.
Hi. I'm so glad you're here. As someone who is lucky enough to live in an affluent neighborhood, have a car, blah, 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 I would so gladly have my taxes go for funding public transit. I would love to use it, but I can walk faster, quite frankly. The other thing is, so much money is wasted, in our opinion. In our neighborhoods, they seem to replace the curbs all the time. They don't coordinate when someone needs gas, so they dig up the street. We don't need a new curb every time a nick is there. Build a crosswalk somewhere where kids need it. Build a sidewalk where kids have to walk along the road. But just stop all this and put the money in transit. Has Halifax ever considered that?
I mean, Halifax has the 46 priorities or the 46 commitments that fall within the plan. Some of those other pieces, like around transit, exist outside of Halifax, but are part of the overall plan to reduce emissions. So we only have sort of some level of control over those. But I would say talk to your counselors too and let them know what your priorities are, because I think that has a huge impact. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We just take one more question here, Joe.
Yeah, just a non-transit one.
Uh-huh.
I was just kind of wondering, so you're more aware of what is going on than me, perhaps, and I was wondering, you've been talking about how there is an urgency to it.
Mhm.
Does it feel to you like we're going to meet that urgency?
Depends on the day. I mean, some days I feel optimistic, but I feel like there's a huge push and campaign to push back against carbon pricing and to greenlight even more fossil fuel projects. And we know that if we're going to have any chance of meeting our targets, we need to pause fossil fuel development and we need to dramatically increase renewables. I mean, Alberta put a pause on all renewable development, right? And that feels very ideological. And there are governments being elected in parts of the world, and it is a very ideological thing. So, I mean, I feel good and confident about our local plan. I feel good and confident about Halifax for the most part getting it. But when I look around the world and at other places, I don't know. I feel like we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you all, and please become involved. Look out for what we'll be doing in April at the libraries across Halifax, and thank you all for having me. Thank you for your patience with this little one. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for that great overall discussion around what we're doing here in Halifax and why. So we just have one last word for our sponsors, that's you. So we have a report on our canvas from Pam. If you want to do that now, Pam.
So, yes, I will. Oops, and keep my asses, yeah. So we have one more week to go in our pledge drive, because we are a self-sustaining, self-financing congregation, and we're, this is kind of the third week of 4 weeks of our pledge drive, and we only went up a little bit, but every little bit counts, right? So we're at $90,427, which is 86.9%. 86 point, it could be 8%, but I think it's 86.9%. We'll be optimistic. So we're getting there, but we're still got some way to go.
I don't know if you can see that on Zoom, but Pam's marking it up on our poster on the wall here.
next week we've only got a handful of people left, so.
Yes, so there's just a few people left who we need to contact about their pledge. If you aren't able to support us through our annual pledge drive, you can put cash in the collection plate each week, which will be going around now. They're in here. Yeah. If you want to make a donation to a particular cause, there are envelopes that you can write on it what your donation is specifically for, such as the Saturday brunch or our roof, which is done, but we still haven't fully paid for it. You can always send your contributions as well to the treasurer at uuch.ca. If you want to contribute your time and your talents, there are a number of committees that are described each time in our monthly newsletter, and that newsletter will be out next week. Our closing hymn will be number 134, Our World is One World.
Stand if you are able. Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash around about, the clouds that cover us, the rain that falls. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make, a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, a stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fears and greed make many holes. Our hearts can hear a different call.
We'll now extinguish our chalice to close our service with words from May Sarton. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. Oh, thank you, Joe. And now our closing song, our Here Together, on the back of your order of service.
I need you to help me with the jingle bells. Okay? You got it? You want to come sit up here? Oh no, you're shy now, hey? Okay, it's on the back of your order of service. We have spent time together. 1, 2, 3. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road that brought us together. Thank you. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. And my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again.
We'll give everyone 15 minutes to to use the facilities, grab a cup of coffee, maybe chat to Kim, and then reconvene for a very short period of time for the special meeting to vote on one motion. The motion to change the word church to community in our name that we call ourselves in the community.